Itadori Yuji is a depressed psychopath, but doesn't even know it. He awakens tied to a chair, and the first thing he sees is a dude who would rather wear a blindfold than see Yuji's ugly face. That's Gojo Satoru, a teacher at Jujutsu Tech. Apparently, Yuji has been scheduled to be executed. Earlier that day, Yuji calls the hospital to check on his foul-mouthed grandpa. The man successfully abuses the nurse and yells at our boy to visit an after-school club. Fushiguro Megumi breaks into Yuji's high school to retrieve a cursed object and freaks out when he can't find it. He calls his sensei and gets told that he can't leave without retrieving it. Sasaki and Iguchi are the only people who can tolerate Yuji. They also happen to be members of the occult club. Unfortunately, they get served a notice to forfeit their club room because of how useless they are. Sasaki tries to prove their usefulness by revealing activities of a vengeful spirit on the rugby field, but the head prefect tells them that it's just tics. He then points out that Yuji is signed to both the track and field clubs, so the occult club doesn't meet the number of participants to qualify. Apparently, Sensei Takagi had signed Yuji up by force, and they choose to settle things via a race. Fushiguro notices a grade 2 curse on the rugby field, but dismisses it because it's not the object he's searching for. He runs into Yuji, wiping the floor with Takagi and shot put. Afterwards, Yuji reaffirms Sasaki that he isn't leaving the occult club and runs off to the hospital. As he crosses paths with Fushiguro, he notices the presence of the cursed object, but isn't fast enough to catch Yuji. At the hospital, his grandpa curses him out, but later advises him to use his strength to help people. He passes away soon after this. Our little psychopath signs all the paperwork and tries to keep his chin up. At that point, Counterfeit Goku shows up and confirms that Yuji has the cursed object. He blames curses for unexplained deaths and weird events, but Yuji treats him like he's saying the earth is flat. Apparently, the cursed object was a talisman to keep lesser curses away. Yuji finally hands Fushiguro an empty box and confesses that his friends planned to peel the seal off of the cursed object that night. In truth, Sasaki and Iguchi hide on campus as they peel off the seal. It turns out to be a finger, but the resulting curse energy scares the life out of them. Yuji and Fushiguro run until they arrive at the premises. The energy is so intense that he warns Yuji not to follow him. Yeah, right, like you could separate a psychopath from his crazy. Meanwhile, Sasaki hides from the curses until Iguchi shows up with one already feasting on his head. Fushiguro rushes up the stairs and activates his divine dogs to kill off the first curse he sees. Yuji is downstairs feeling useless and jumps into action using his grandpa's parting words as the excuse. While Counterfeit Goku laments that he cannot save Sasaki from this mighty curse, Yuji bursts in through the window and punches it just hard enough to save Sasaki and Iguchi. This gives Fushiguro a chance to finish off the curse, and he's surprised that Yuji isn't scared. Our boy then lifts Sasaki up, and the finger falls from her pocket. Fushiguro calls it the Ryumen Sukuna finger. Just then, a huge curse hand emanates from the ceiling, but Fushiguro pushes Yuji away before it can crush him. It grabs hold of him and smashes him through the wall. Stubborn Yuji then decides to help out as much as he can. When he almost gets swallowed by the curse, Yuji swallows Sukuna's finger. See? Psychopath. Fushiguro is scared that he might die, but our boy pulls through and kills the curse with a swipe of his hand. Afterwards, Sukuna takes control and laughs maniacally about reincarnating this era. Somehow, Yuji regains control of his body, but Fushiguro is hell-bent on exorcising him. Our sweet psychopath tries explaining that he's totally fine, but Fushiguro finds it hard to believe. Gojo Satoru then shows up and takes pics of his colleague to mock him with later. He scopes Yuji and asks for 10 seconds with Sukuna, telling our boy not to worry because he's the strongest. It's true, dude is unbelievable. He hands Fushiguro his bag of food, and Sukuna tries to sneak in and attack. Somehow, Gojo sits on his back. He continues evading all of his attacks with ease until his 10 seconds is up. Yuji easily regains control, but Gojo knocks his ass out either way. He asks Fushiguro what to do with him, and despite jujutsu laws requiring Yuji's death, he doesn't want our boy to die. Gojo then tells him to leave it to him. He's always a little bit crazy. With that, we're taken back to Yuji being tied to a chair. Apparently, all Gojo could do was to suspend our boy's execution. Sukuna's 20 fingers are all-powerful curses that can't be destroyed, so Gojo had proposed to the elders that Yuji be made to consume all of them before he gets executed. He then presents the youngster with the option of either dying now or dying after consuming all of Sukuna. The next day, Yuji visits Iguchi in the hospital and meets a downtrodden Sasaki. He takes all the blame for collecting the cursed finger in the first place, and later encourages her before leaving. He links up with Gojo next and gets asked if he has made up his mind. Yuji wants to judge by the amount of damage these curses cause, and Gojo explains how gruesome things get. They then head up to pack the ashes of Yuji's grandfather. There, he decides to consume Sukuna's second finger. Gojo stands guard as he watches its effects and is impressed when Yuji remains in control afterward. Our boy resolves to do something about the curses since he'll die anyway. This makes Gojo very happy, and he instructs the psychopath to pack his things. A bandaged Fushiguro shows up and announces that Yuji will be going to the Tokyo Metropolitan Jujutsu Technical High School. Our boy says a prayer by his grandpa's grave and goes off with Gojo. Upon arrival, he's told that he'll have an interview with the principal. Suddenly, Sukuna mocks Gojo via a mouth on Yuji's face. Our boy slaps himself to shut the demon up, but the mouth just emanates on his hand and threatens to kill Gojo after taking over Yuji's body. Two crazy people sharing one vessel, the universe really hates our protagonist. Or is it the producers? Gojo explains that Sukuna was once a human who miserably beat up a bunch of sorcerers back in the Golden Age. He travailed as the king of curses after his death, just to continue his terrorism. Gojo is sure he can beat him, though. They enter and meet some dude too old to be making dolls. Turns out he's Principal Yaga Masamichi, and he expresses his dissatisfaction with Gojo for coming late. Masamichi begins to drill our boy about his reason for coming, and he reiterates that it was someone's dying wish. This isn't enough for the principal, so he sends one of his dolls after Yuji. It punches him into oblivion, and then some. Our boy tries to tackle it, but it turns off the lights and whoops his ass some more. Masamichi lights a candle again and asks Yuji if he'll blame his grandpa when he gets killed by a curse. This question shakes him, and the doll attacks in that moment. It then dawns on Yuji that consuming Sukuna is something that only he can do. He tackles the incoming doll and tells this to this principal. Impressed, he announces that he's been admitted and tells Gojo to show him to his dorm. Our boy is super excited and immediately puts up a Jennifer Lawrence poster. Gojo then tests him to see if he'd rather sit around than fight to get Sukuna's fingers. He lets him know that the fingers are difficult to find, so Yuji will act as a human radar to make things easier. It turns out that Fushiguro is right next door and is so unhappy about his new neighbor that he literally slams the door against him. The third newcomer is on her way by train and is super excited about seeing someone called Saori. Fushiguro and our sweet psychopath wait at the train station for their new classmate, and Gojo joins them much later. They see her harassing a man searching for models, and Yuji is too scared to approach her. He may be crazy, but she's psychotic, you'll see. Gojo then calls out to her, and she later introduces herself as Kugisaki Nobara. Bottom line, she's a pompous brat. The boys introduce themselves, but she doesn't think much of them. Gojo later announces that they'll tour Tokyo, since Yuji and Kugisaki are from the countryside. They both get excited, only to get taken to a building full of curses. Yeah, Gojo's a liar. There happens to be a cemetery nearby, and Fushiguro explains that the fear associated with it brought about the curses. Kugisaki gets annoyed by how dumb Yuji is, and gets more irritated when she finds out he swallowed Sukuna's finger. Gojo leaves the two newbies to exorcise the curse, and hands Yuji a weapon to assist his ignorance of jujutsu. He warns our boy not to let Sukuna out, and as they enter the building, he tells Fushiguro that Kugisaki is the one being tested. Miss Pompous suggests that she and Yuji split up, but our boy disagrees. She then kicks the shit out of him and heads upstairs. Just then, a curse ambushes Yuji, but he easily defeats it with some stellar moves. Gojo is outside, admitting that our boy has some screws loose because he has no fear of these weird-looking curses. He plans to see just how crazy Kugisaki can get. Talk of the pompous witch, she comes face to face with a curse disguising as a mannequin. It doesn't respond, so she pulls out some nails, imbues them with cursed energy, and hammers them into the mannequin. Multiple eyes open on the mannequin, but Kugisaki simply snaps her fingers and her nails dig into it until its head explodes. She then sees a scared child who refuses to follow her. Wise move, kid. Unfortunately, he gets taken hostage by another curse. This freaks her out because curses in the countryside lack such intelligence. She weighs her options and drops all her weapons. It turns out that the curse never planned to release the little boy. Kugisaki is filled with a strange emotion called regret. That's until Yuji punches through the wall. He then bursts in, slices off the hand of the curse, and saves the boy, all in one move. The curse tries to escape, but Kugisaki quickly places a straw doll on its severed arm and hammers a cursed nail into it. This technique is called resonance, and it killed this curse from a distance, making Gojo concur that she's crazy. Saori had come into Kugisaki's life when she was in the 1st grade. She was the nicest person alive, but the villagers claimed she looked down on them and hated her for it. They eventually drove her back to the city. Yes, the story is important. Yuji lashes out at Miss Pompous for going off alone, and she changes the topic to him being a freak for breaking through concrete with his bare hands. He then asks why she came to Jujutsu Tech, and she yells that she hates the countryside. She considers it worth risking her life and looks forward to meeting Saori again. See? Important. She then thanks Yuji for his help. Later on, Gojo sees that the young boy gets home safely while Yuji and Kugisaki wait. He later joins them and offers to get them dinner. The whole time, Fushiguro pouts because he got left out and the two newbies laugh at him. In Eishu Juvenile Detention Center, some prisoners witness a cursed womb in the sky. This special grade emergency led to 3 Jujutsu Tech first years being dispatched to the scene. Unfortunately, one of them died. Mr. Ijichi briefs Yuji, Kugisaki, and Fushiguro on the emergency. The detention center was sealed off, and citizens within 500 meters of it were evacuated. They predict that the curse womb may become a special grade if it's the type to metamorphose. Our dumb hero has no idea what special grade means, so Mr. Ijichi explains that a boatload of bombs may prove useless against it. Apparently, only someone as powerful as Gojo could take it on, but he's away on business. Mr. Ijichi is still telling them to be scared when a lady comes looking for Tadashi, her son who's been detained alongside the curse. Her tears get to Yuji, and he, alongside the other two, resolve to save the detainees. As they step in, Mr. Ijichi puts up a veil to separate them from the real world. Fushiguro then summons his divine dog to let them know when the curse comes close. Immediately they cross the doors. They notice how twisted the inside looks. Fushiguro deduces that they're in an innate dimension created by the curse. Kugisaki and Yuji immediately freak out because they can't find the door. Fushiguro then eases their mind by telling them that the dog remembers the scent of the exit. They continue scouting and come across 3 corpses, one belonging to Tadashi. Yuji wants to return with it, but Fushiguro wants to leave it behind because he had killed an innocent girl and wasn't worth saving when he was alive. Yuji claps back, but Kugisaki has had enough of their argument. As she's about to stop them, she gets sucked into the ground. Fushiguro's divine dog had been murdered, and the special grade curse stood right beside both boys. Yuji wills himself to attack it, but gets his hand cut off. Literally should have kept his hand to himself. Meanwhile, Kugisaki appears in a void with multiple cursed spirits, and Fushiguro had gotten separated from Yuji. Our boy had tied up his bleeding hand and tried to get Sukuna's help. He doesn't give it and promises to kill Yuji's friends if he relinquishes control. The special grade spat pure curse energy that ate up the concrete. Yuji then begged Fushiguro to find Kugisaki and leave the premises. He promised to buy time until he gets their signal and then switch with Sukuna. Fushiguro hated the plan, but went with it anyway. Back to the present, and our psychopath gets the beating of his life as the special grade lands multiple attacks with cursed energy. It gets so bad that his remaining fingers peel off, making him realize how weak he has always been. Meanwhile, Fushiguro appears just in time to save Kugisaki from a curse that was about to have her for dinner. Yuji bursts into tears over how weak he is. He then channels all of his fear and regret into one last meaningless punch, which the curse easily catches. He hears a howl and realizes that it's Fushiguro's signal, so he lets Sukuna out. Sukuna decides that the best way to get back at Yuji would be to take the special grade curse outside. Unfortunately, the beast tries to attack him with his back turned. Sukuna heals both of Yuji's hands and dispels the attack. He smashes its head against the concrete, and then steps on it with enough force to shatter the bridge. As they fall, Sukuna severs the arm of the beast and laughs like a maniac, ergo, like himself. Outside, Mr. Ijichi leaves with a beaten-up Kugisaki, while Fushiguro waits for Yuji's return, with the intention of killing him if need be. Sukuna had severed all of the curse's limbs, but it easily regenerates them. He then uses a domain expansion technique called Malevolent Shrine. This slices the curse like a chef would some onions. Sukuna then retrieves his finger from its chest and sets it ablaze. He gives Yuji a chance to switch back, but our psychopath is too weak to do so. Fushiguro can tell that the curse is dead. He's only worried about Yuji returning safely. Just then, Sukuna appears behind him to announce the opposite. To make sure Yuji doesn't switch back, he rips his heart out. He then swallows his finger and threatens to kill Fushiguro for the fun of it. He brags about Yuji coming back, and Sukuna points out that our boy is too much of a wuss to kill himself, referencing how he cried his eyes out mere minutes ago. Fushiguro analyzes the situation and decides that he'll try his best to get Sukuna to regenerate Yuji's heart before the switch. He then summons Nue, a cursed beast, and they both come at Sukuna together. He easily dodges all of their attacks and punches Fushiguro into oblivion. In his defense, he summons Orochi, a snake beast, and uses him to lift Sukuna into the air. There, Nue strikes him with lightning. Sukuna smiles as he destroys the snake in one go and then literally wipes the floor with Fushiguro. He kicks him through buildings and kicks him back before he can land. Nue then catches the poor thing mid-air, but Sukuna pounds them into the ground. Fushiguro quickly releases Nue, seeing as he has lost 2 cursed beasts already. Sukuna sees through his plan and tells him that it's not enough to fix Yuji's heart. He then asks why Fushiguro is wasting his time trying to save Yuji, and he remembers Tsumiki, a kind person who ended up being cursed. He had resolved since then to help the remaining good people, so he unleashes his curse energy, and this excites Sukuna. Just as they're about to fight, Fushiguro explains that he had no logical reason to save Yuji before, and quips that it was purely selfish and emotional. Yuji then suppresses Sukuna long enough to have an emotional moment with Fushiguro. He then bleeds out and drops to the ground. Moral lesson: hold on to your hearts, guys. Geto gets questioned by Jogo, one of 3 curses that accompany him. He's asked if experimenting with Sukuna's finger was worth it, and he claims they learned a few things. Gojo and Mr. Ijichi are in the morgue with Yuji's corpse, and he reiterates how he warned them not to fight. Gojo admits that the higher-ups had used the mission to dispose of Yuji and wonders whether he should kill them all. Miss Larry barges in at that moment and calls Gojo out for having a soft spot for Yuji. She then tells him not to take it out on Mr. Ijichi and proceeds to autopsy Yuji's corpse. She may like her job a little too much. Fushiguro and Kugisaki sit glumly on the stairs outside as they talk about Yuji's death. Miss Pompous acts all tough, but her mouth wobbles as she tries to hold back her tears. Meiki Zenin, a second-year student, obliviously asks Fushiguro if he's glum because they're having a funeral. She then seems like an ass when her colleague Panda tells her that their friend actually died. As she lashes out at him for not speaking sooner, Fushiguro introduces them to Kugisaki as Zenin, the best cursed tool user, Inumaki, the cursed speech user who only speaks in rice ball ingredients, and Panda, who's, well, a panda. The last person is Okatsu, but he's overseas with some baddies. Panda quips that he would like them to participate in the Kyoto Sister School exchange event. Kugisaki has no idea what they're talking about, so Fushiguro explains that it's the other tech school in the country. Apparently, both principals will choose games spanning over 2 days on paper. In reality, sorcerers will each fight in teams on day 1 and individually on day 2. Anything goes except killing. The second years offer to train Fushiguro and Kugisaki before the D-Day and gaslight them into doing it for Yuji. They both promise to leave if the event becomes pointless, though. Jogo tells Geto of their plan to conquer mankind, claiming that curses are the pure beings. Geto then tells him that he'll need to meet two conditions for that to happen. The first being to immobilize Gojo, and the other to get Sukuna on their side. He's sure Yuji is dead, but Geto speaks like there's a chance he's not. Somehow, somewhere, our sweet psychopath trash-talks Sukuna for ripping his heart out. He then threatens to beat his ass and actually tries to do it. His efforts fail, and Sukuna sits on his back. He explains that they're in his innate domain and that they're not dead yet. He promises to fix up their heart if Yuji agrees to two conditions. The first is to let him take control of his body for a minute when he says the word enchant, and the second is that he'll forget their deal. Yuji still doesn't agree, so Sukuna promises not to kill anyone within that minute. He explains that it'll be a pact, and that pacts are binding in the world of Jujutsu. Our boy pretends to agree just so he can punch Sukuna in the face. The incarnation then suggests a fight to the death, where the winner gets his way. Yuji foolishly agrees and gets his head slashed within the second. Gojo tells Mr. Ijichi that he became a teacher because he wants to cause a revolution in Jujutsu. Unfortunately, he can't do it by killing off the elders in the field. He turned to education to raise strong and intelligent allies like Hikari, Okatsu, and most recently Yuji. Miss Larry is about to start the autopsy when a very naked Yuji sits up. This freaks out Mr. Ijichi, but Gojo simply walks over and gives our boy a high five. He then gets Miss Larry to leave. Yuji declared dead so he can train him in time for the exchange event. Geto tells Jogo to seal Gojo with a special grade cursed object called Prison Realm rather than try to kill him. The curse is perplexed that such a monstrous object still exists. He soon sets the closest waiter ablaze and burns everyone else in the restaurant soon enough. He then asks Geto for the Prison Realm and promises to kill Gojo in exchange. As if. Fushiguro takes Tadashi's name tag to his mother and apologizes for not being able to save him. Back at Jujutsu Tech, Panda and Kugisaki are already training. Fushiguro joins them, and the first thing he does is ask what kind of people Zenin wants to save as a Jujutsu sorcerer. Meanwhile, Kugisaki is getting flung around. Zenin then offers to answer Fushiguro if he can land a blow on her. Having bounced back, our sweet psychopath begs Gojo to teach him how to become the strongest. Gojo then uses two cans as examples. He shoots the first one and twists the second. In essence, he applied cursed energy to the first and a cursed technique to the second. He uses electricity and electrical appliances as analogies and later tells Yuji that he can't do any techniques because he wasn't born with them. He falls desolate on the ground because he thought he could pull off a Kamehameha. Gojo later encourages him to focus on improving his basic attacks. He regains himself with the intention of hitting Gojo with the cursed energy he used back in the juvenile detention center. His first punch carries 0 cursed energy, and Gojo has to correct his mentality that you have to be angry to produce cursed energy. Meanwhile, Zenin lets Fushiguro try using her long stick, and he admits that it feels pretty good. Everyone trained to maintain a constant flow of cursed energy even when emotions are high. So Gojo gives Yuji a bunch of movies from different genres to incite various emotions. He then adds a cursed doll that requires a constant influx of energy. Yuji's mission is to watch the movies while pouring a small amount of cursed energy into the doll, lest it wakes up and attacks him. As the second years discuss curses, Fushiguro remembers Sukuna calling him a waste of talent. He then tries touching the ground and his hand passes through it. Yuji gets carried away with his movie and the doll punches his lights out. Gojo then excuses himself but asks about Sukuna's conditions. Weirdly, Yuji cannot remember them. As Mr. Ijichi is driving Gojo, he gets a weird feeling and sends him away instantly. Just then, Jogo lands from the sky with enough force to shatter concrete.